Hello everyone, welcome to Huckstack Tutorials. In this tutorial series, we'll talk about Git commands, and how we track our project files. So what we will learn here in this tutorial, we'll talk about what is Git, how to install Git, what is repository. We'll talk about and describe the branch concept and how we can create branches, and also we'll talk about how to initialize a repository. So let's move on. Okay, the first thing that we need to know is what is Git and what is it good for. The first definition that you can find basically on Google is Git is a version control tool that helps a developer to track what all the changes that he or she has done in his code. Basically, in a simple word, means that where do you want to save your code changes. So for example, if you created a project and you have some files on it, where are you going to save it? On your local machine? And then how are you going to track your changes? For example, if you add some code, add some lines of code, and then you want to save it, how do you go back to the history and see, for example, 2 days later, you see what did I change 2 days back? How do you go through the history of your changes? If you just simply save it on your local machine, it cannot track your changes. You cannot go through the history because it always shows the latest files. So in order to solve this problem in coding, we use Git. And it's kind of like a version control. It tracks all of the changes that you make through your application. It tracks all the files, and it has a lot of commands that it helps you track your...
Okay, the first step is to install Git. How we can install Git? You can go to this URL, which I will provide, to the GitHub URL that I'll add to the description of this tutorial. So you go to this URL and it will show you for different operating systems, Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. And I will provide also the links for Windows. You can see based on your operating system, if it's 32-bit, 64-bit for Windows actually. You can click on any of links and it will download it, and it's exe file, so you can install it on your machine. And if it's a Mac machine, you can just go to this URL, which I will provide to the description of this tutorial. Basically, if you go to the GitHub link that I add, and you can download it from this, or you can you do a command line. And yeah, it also comes with Xcode. So if you already have Xcode and you download the tools for it, you will get Git for free. So that's how you can download Git and install it on your machine. Let's go to the next step.
Okay, the next thing that we want to learn is what is repository. I remember the first time that I heard this word, I was like, what the hell is this word? And I remembered my colleague was talking about the repository, and I was like, I wish I would understand what is repository. And at that time, I didn't know Git, I didn't know anything about the source control. So I just want to say, unlike its name that it sounds very complicated, it's nothing but your source code and the changes that we have. So if you heard that somebody says that the repository, they're referring to the source code that you have on Git, or it's the source code is online or somewhere, something about that. So the terminology repository means that your source code. And where do we save our source code? There are some free service online that you can go online and add your files and create a repository so you can track your changes. The one that we use here for this tutorial is GitHub, and this is the very favorite stuff for all of the developers. There are some other websites that we will not go through it, but if you create a account and create an account on this website, it's called github.com, and this is my account, as you can see. So if you create an account, you will see this option here, and when you click on the plus, you will see this new repository. That's the name that I was talking about. So you create a new repository, And let me make this view a little bit bigger. So there are some options. So you can give the repository a name. So we can go ahead and say git tutorial. And it gives you the green sign that, yeah, you can create this repository because it gives you a link to this repository. You can give the description and it's optional. You can just leave it blank. If it's a public repository, you can just make it public, or if it's private, you can just make it private. You can add a README file. We'll talk about README file. It's basically if you want to describe some guidelines for your repository, for your source code, how to run your code and all of this stuff. So you can add a README file here, but we will not add it here. It talks about .gitignore. I will talk about gitignore later. Just don't worry about it right now. We will get into it. Choose a license. You can leave it empty, and then you can create the repository. As soon as you create the repository, it gives you some guidelines that how you can talk to your repository, how you can basically upload your file. Okay, we have a concept of branch in Git, and what is it good for? So imagine that your source code is on one line and a green line. So every time that you have some changes, you push or you add it to your branch, and this is, for example, this is one feature, and then after a while there's another feature, and you add some more feature. Just if you imagine these circles are a new feature or new code to your code base, and you can go forward like this. So this is one way of handling your source code. So every time you have some change, you save it basically online, and it goes all to one place. But what if that not only you are working on this project, there is another person is also working on this project, and if you, for example, save some stuff that are not finished yet, they will get confused or it will break their changes. So what do we do here to avoid these kind of conflicts? So this is the branch concept comes into place. So you can go off of the main place that you save your file and create a new line and add all of your changes and go till the end until you finish the feature. So you have multiple changes to finish the feature, and then once you're finished, you can add your changes to the main line. So we call these lines branches. So the main line is basically, we call it master or main. And any branch that you create, you can name this branch anything. Some people call it developer branch. Some people, it's very custom name. You can add any name to your branch. But basically, this is the important one. You should not have some unfinished work on your main branch. If you want to add a new feature, yes, you create a new branch, you work on it, and after it's finished, you merge it to the master branch or main branch. This way, you don't break your existing main branch at all the time. So other people can look at your code and they said, okay, so there's no broken code over there or unfinished work over there. That's the concept of branch. So on your repository, you can create branch as many as you want. And then you can merge your branch after you're finished, or you can delete the branch. Okay, now the question that might come up is, how do I create the branch? It's very easy. If you remember from the repository that we created, since we don't have any changes here, it doesn't give us the option for adding branch. But if I go to the repositories that I already created, after we add some files, you'll see the icon here, this button here, and what it says that it is on the main branch. So whatever you see here, the files that you can see here, it is on the main branch. And if I want to change the branch, currently I don't have any other branches for this repository. There's only one branch which is called main. But if I go to the other branch, it's very easy. I can just search it here and I find the branch and I can switch to that branch and go to that branch and see what change I have on that branch. If I want to see all of the branches, I can click on this and it shows me all the branches as I have. As I mentioned, I have only one branch here, which is main, but I can create as many as I want. So I can create a new branch here and I can give it a name and I can say develop branch. So if I create a branch, it creates a new branch for me. As you can see, develop, and I still have the main. So I can simply delete this branch, and that's all I have to do. And if I restore here and go back to my create form, now if I click here, you'll see that the number of branches are different now. I used to have only one main branch, now I have develop branch as well. So I can go back there and then delete it because I don't need it, honestly. So I go back and I delete this develop branch. That's how you can create, search for branch, and delete branch.
Okay, after we download Git, the next step is to initialize Git. So I created a new folder, and inside of this folder there's nothing. So I called the folder Git tutorial. As you can see, this is the folder here, if you see, and this is my terminal. So you can go to the folder in your terminal, and if you don't know what is terminal, you can just go to and type in your Mac machine. You can just on Spotlight search for terminal, and it opens a terminal for you. So I opened the terminal via my web store, so you can open your terminal wherever you want. So the first command that we will learn is git init, and what is it doing? It's basically initialize Git for us for sending later commands. So basically it initializes this Git for us to track our changes. So we will do it one time only, and this is last forever. So if you want to track for the starting point, or for the starting point of the project, you just send this command and you don't need to send this command anymore. It's only one time. So I just do git init, and this is the command, and it will initialize the folder for you. So let's look at the folder. As soon as you send this command, it will create this folder for you, .git. This is hidden by default. If you want to see your hidden files, I think you have to hold shift command dot or something like that on your Mac machine. But make sure that your hidden files are shown on your Mac. Then you will see this .git. If I go to this .git, there are some configuration files that you don't care. You don't want to see what Git is doing behind the scene. But this is the first command that you have to send before sending any commands. So that's very important to know.